Hey guys! Welcome to the film industry and film school. So my name is Sabina Boutros. I am a fourth year at LU. I study performing arts and I minor in TV film. And my specialization is production design and art direction. But today I'm going to be giving you a light workshop. So let's get started. So as said before, I'm going to be giving you today an introduction to lights and how to light for film. Starting off with what is light, and going into more details of different types of light and how you can use them to achieve whatever look you're going for to support your cinematography. So to start off with, what is light? I'm pretty sure by now you might have seen this chart before, which is about the electromagnetic wavelength and how it operates in terms of like white balance and just in camera. But today I'm going to be talking to you about where does light fit in here? And how is it that light transforms and how do we see it actually as people? So first of all, light is actually is part of the electromagnetic wavelength. And it lies between the infrared and the ultraviolet wavelengths. It's in between. And it's a wavelength and it's recorded it comes out in frequencies. So there's different types of frequencies and different types indicates different just light measures and colors of lights. But first of all, it's very important to know that light isn't something that like naturally exists. We don't see it the way it actually is in nature. In nature, it is a frequency, just like any frequency, in sound or something. And it is through our bodies that actually translate this frequency into something more of what we see and how we see it. So just some like general notes about light, as you can see in the PowerPoint, of how the speed of light and how it travels, as you can read it. And also there's a picture, which I really like, about the prism, in which you see like one light going into the prism and then diverging into different colors. So how is it that we see colors? Well, here's the thing. Actually, light has no color. It is how our eyes, the receptors in our eyes perceive it, that we actually see it. So for example, in a way actually, light is a form of a combination of different colors and the setting for which you're in.
So to summarize what Sabina's been saying, the speed of light is about 300 million meters per second as compared to the speed of sound, which is 343.2 meters per second in dry air at 20 C. Sound travels at different speeds in different mediums, but light is constant. It travels at 300 million meters per second. That's why we measure distances between stars in light years or light minutes between us and the sun, for example. The sun is 8 light minutes away from us, which means that if it explodes, we won't know till 8 minutes later. So whenever you're looking at the stars, you're looking at the past or how these stars were in the past. And mind you, there are galaxies and stars that are billions of light years away. So we're looking at things that are billions of light years back in time. The electromagnetic light spectrum emits light from radio waves to gamma waves. Anything above the visible light spectrum, which is right here, is harmful to us, like ultraviolet and X-rays and gamma rays can actually kill us. Anything below that, infrared, microwaves and radio waves, might hurt us in some ways, like microwaves might make us feel warm, so do infrared waves, but they don't necessarily harm us as would the ultraviolet and X-rays and gamma rays at shorter wavelengths. But anyway, our focus here is the visible light, which is between red and violet, a little bit longer than 700 nanometers, a little bit shorter than 400 nanometers. Luma is an achromatic representation of how bright an object is perceived to be. What does that mean? It means that it's the channel in video that we use to represent brightness. Keep that in mind for now. We're not going to focus on that. What is color? Color is the result of light being reflected off an object, solid, liquid, or gas, or whatever, at a different wavelength than the original light because of the properties of the object to absorb other wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. Meaning, If we have white light coming from the sun or any other source that is at 5,600 Kelvin or more, well, we'll get into what that means later, but let's just say that visible light from the sun is hitting a fruit, an orange fruit. A fruit will absorb all the other colors coming in from the sun, from that white light, and will reflect back only the wavelength of the orange color. And that's what our eye captures and perceives as the color orange. In video, our primary colors are RGB, red, green, and blue, though in reality, the real primary colors are red, yellow, and blue, not green. But in the digital world and in the analog video world, green has been substituted for yellow to give us RGB. The absence of these colors, red, green, and blue, will give us black. And the combination of these colors, red, green, and blue, will give us white at their most intense setting. I'll explain that in a bit. The combination of blue and red will give us magenta, the combination of blue and green will give us cyan, and the combination of green and red will give us yellow. These are the complementary colors, yellow, cyan, and magenta. RGB is an additive form of color representation. We need to add green, add red, and add blue to get the colors that we need. We never add cyan or yellow or magenta. We just add green, red, or blue, or we subtract them from the mix. Like if we subtract red, we end up with cyan. If we subtract blue, we end up with yellow. If we subtract green, we end up with magenta. I'll explain this a little bit further in just a bit, but I need to cover one more thing. Bit depth. Now, don't focus on this too much for now, but let's just understand that the smallest measurement of data in a computer world, in a digital world, is a bit. RGB, standard color RGB, what you see on your monitors and on your phones, is made up of 8 bits per color channel, which means that there are 8 bits in red, 8 bits in green, 8 bits in blue. Every bit has 2 possibilities. It's either a 1 or a 0. It's either on or off. That's just how data works. Don't worry about it too much. I'll explain that in another workshop. When we say 8-bit color, this means that every color has 8 bits of data in it. This means that 8 red bits, 8 green bits, 8 blue bits. So because in each bit we have 2 possibilities, it becomes 2 to the power 8, which basically means 2 times 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 2. Okay, enough there. Basically, it's 2 times itself 8 times, which will give us 256 possible color shades in each channel. So, that's 256 possible color tones in red, 256 color tones in green, 256 color tones in blue. If we multiply all these channels, RGB, so that's 256 times 256 times 256, we get 16,777,216 color possibilities when we combine them together. Like I said, the absence of red, green, and blue will give us black. So red is set at 0, green at 0, and blue at 0. Now if I increase the red bar here, notice how it starts giving in a bit more of that red tint from a dark red all the way to a bright red at 255. There are 256 shades, but 0 here is counted as the first shade. Now, if I decrease that back to 0 and take up the green, we get the same thing, 256 shades of green and 256 shades of blue. Now, when I increase red, I'll end up with magenta, which is one of the secondary colors. If I take green all the way up, so we have 256 values of red, green, and blue, we end up with white. Now, if I take down the red all the way to 0 and just keep green and blue, we end up with cyan. And if I take up the red and remove the blue, we end up with yellow. So the combination of these 2 colors will give us yellow. That's the other secondary color along with cyan and magenta. So we can get any color we want by mixing these three values of red, green, and blue. As I was saying before, if I reduce blue, we end up with yellow. If I subtract red, we end up with cyan. And if I subtract green, we end up with magenta. We need to add green to get back to white.
Light is also not only important to tell us what color an object is, but also to model this object or to model the settings around us. And model is meaning in terms of to give it shape, to give it dimension, and also in a certain way to give it its form and how it is perceived in connection to where it is. Perhaps, let's say I am here and I have this white thingy, which we're gonna talk about later on. So perhaps, because of the light shining on me right now, I am put into the foreground and this is behind me. And this is what light does. It gives me dimension. It gives a certain feeling of space, modularity, and also it gives me form. You see me in the way I am with my edges. And that's all because of how light gets hit on an object or a subject, how it reflects, and how other colors are being absorbed, that it gives you the setting that you are seeing right now. The way we see color is through a certain temperature for which the light is. I really like to give an example of burning a match or maybe burning a candle. So let's take in this lighter and we're gonna look at the flame. You see it in different colors. So why is that so? Because actually light is measured in kind of temperature, and the unit that we use for this is called Kelvin. So it is in what Kelvin that we know what color the light is. So for example, let's look at this flame again. Once it's being burned, we have the strongest, right? The strongest energy source coming through. And then the energy is being kind of diffused into the air as the flame goes up. And so, meaning that the blue actually is higher in Kelvin than the orange. And how is that so? When we first burn the lighter, we're getting a bit of an orange because orange falls into the spectrum of lower temperature. So you can say perhaps, if we look at the presentation, orange kind of starts within like 3000 and goes up. The more we're going up in kelvins, which is the more we're going up in temperature, the color changes from a warmer to a colder color. A bit confusing, but let's look at the flame again. So here the energy is the most powerful. The temperature is the most powerful. Like if I put my finger here, I'm probably gonna burn myself. But if I put my finger here, I'm fine. Why is that so? Because the energy here is lesser, meaning the temperature is lesser, so I don't really burn myself. But here it is much more powerful. The much more powerful, the much more the Kelvin is, the temperature is, the cooler it is. So we see it in blue. And the lesser the Kelvin, we're getting a more warmer tone of color, which is here the orangey, and in the middle, that kind of progression of color and the progression of energy as it's turning into something else. And temperature, which is in Kelvin. So it's interesting because temperature is what affects color. And in order to know what, let's say, white balance settings you want to put on a camera, we refer to the Kelvin, the color, in a way, of what we want our image to look like. I'm pretty sure it's more explained in camera right now, but I'm just going to explain it in terms of light and color more so you can understand the difference. So let's take, for example, morning and nighttime. What do we see and how does color change? So let's say the sun is rising, all right? So you're gonna look at the sky. You're gonna see we're turning from a very dark atmosphere to slightly lighter, 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 lighter. And then throughout the day, we're going to even a lighter setting, a brighter setting. So at first you would look at the sky and you would see like dark and everything. Then as the light is shining through, you're starting to see a bit of like a warm tone of an orangey, of maybe a bit of yellow. And then as the sun is getting stronger and stronger towards like midday or like 1 p.m. to like 3, which is like the sun at its highest temperature, we see the light more turning towards white in a way. We see everything so bright and so clear. But if we look at the color, what color it is, it's kind of white, it's very pale blue, if you want to put it that way. We look at the sky, we see that pale blue, we see white, everything is very illuminated, everything is bright. And that's because the temperature, like the number of kelvins around us is very high. You can probably think of like, I don't know, like 10K of kelvins or something. It's extremely high. But beforehand, let's go towards when the sun was just about shining. We are at much lesser Kelvin. The temperature of light is very low, and then it's getting higher and higher and higher. And this shows right now in the presentation, in the slides, as you can see, we're going from, a very kind of orangey tone to a very blue kind of whitish tone. And it even indicates at what, like blue sky, which is, let's say, daylight, it is at 10,000 kelvins. And the others is like towards a lower number of kelvins. So now that we talked about temperature and color, let's talk about the type of light. You see, when you shine light on something, when light shines on something, it has a certain quality to it. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So there are 4 types of light, and based on how they hit a subject or an object that we see it. We have a hard kind of light, soft, specular, and diffused. This, for example, quality of light is what we call hard light. Because, for example, what we did right here is we just pointed the light source directly at the object, which is tape, gaffer tape. And here we see its shadow. And you can pretty much perceive what type of quality the light is from the shadow. So for example, right here, you can see clearly the shape the shadow is making from the tape. And it's very edged. Like if you look at the edges, they're very hard. They're very edged, and you can clearly see kind of the shape that they're making. This quality of light is called hard, because it's very hard on the object as it's seen. It's very illuminated, and the shadow is very hard. There's another type of light, which is soft. Let's look right now at the way the light is hitting this gaffer tape and the shadow that's making on my hand. In retrospect to the shadow that we saw beforehand, this shadow is very soft. The edges are not very clear. We see the shadow, but we can't really distinguish maybe what the object is from the shadow, and we can't really distinguish very clear lines. The edges are blurred, and this is what we call a soft type of light. It hits the object softly, and the shadow from it isn't hard. A different type of light would be a specular kind of light. To explain specular and diffused, this is what specular is. Specular, in a way, could be also achieved by, let's say, for example, you hit the light source on an object, and you're going to see a very kind of bright spot, and then the edges are going to get more diffused and diffused. This is what we call kind of a specular type of light. And you usually see this all around you, even in your houses. It's basically everywhere. The more diffused type of lighting is this type, where it's very kind of soft. We have kind of a gradient of even color, perhaps on this particular shape. So what happens when light is basically diffused is that whatever the light is being hit on the object, it's being spread in a way. It's not hitting it very angularly. Instead, it's hitting it in a way that makes the light bounce. And thus, when it bounces, the shadows are getting more fluid. They're getting more blurry in a way. Now is maybe the more exciting part of what type of lights there are in film, and what do we use, how do we use them, and why exactly do we use those specific lights other than other lights. So let's take, for example, this light. So let's take, for example, this light. Look at the color of it. The color is kind of orangey. And this type of light is what we call tungsten. Tungsten falls within the, it's around 3,200 kelvins in terms of temperature, which means that it's on the lower scale, which means that color-wise, it is more warm. So tungsten light is usually a light that has a very orangey hue, very warm type of light. Tungsten lights come in a variety of forms in terms of actual light. You have tungsten lights that can go from like a diffused setting to more of a specular setting in terms of like, you know, spotting it on something and more having the light flood around. It depends on the fixture that the tungsten light comes in. But tungsten lights usually are just very warm, very pleasant. Also, tungstens are usually used to light interiors, because when you think of like perhaps a house, you would think of, you know, this orangey hue, this like nice warm vibe. So if you want to achieve in whatever your lighting setting, if you want to achieve a very warm, very inviting setting, you might want to use this light because this light will reflect that particular mood. Tungsten lights come in two types of fixtures. We have the open face and the Fresnel. How do we know what is open face and what is actually Fresnel? Fresnel lighting comes in with a lens in front of the light. So it's not just the light and then, you know, the fixture of the light, but actually there's a lens in front of it, which comes in a certain like circular form. I don't know if it's seen here, here you can see it. So it comes in this like circular form. Why is this so? And what's the difference between the quality of a Fresnel light with an open face? Fresnel light, because of this lens tends to soften the light and to not have the light falling everywhere, but it directs the beams of the light into more of a parallel direction. And so that's the use of the lens. Open face, in retrospect to this, actually has the light falling everywhere, and it actually is kind of hard of a texture. Because of the use of the lens, the light from this specific tungsten light becomes softer. Also, they come in different watts. So you can have a Fresnel that's like in 100 watts, and it can go up to, let's say, 650 or 800 watts. And there's different types of light, and the higher in watts, the more powerful the light is, and the more light it's emitting. We don't have a light right now of an HMI to represent, but HMI, as you can see in the slideshow, is a big, big kind of light. It's huge, and it's very, very, very powerful. It is used a lot in the film industry because HMIs are the replicant of daylight, meaning that the light color that they give off is whitish to blue with a bit of a blue hue, but it's very, very powerful. So why would you use an HMI light? An HMI, as said before, is great at replicating daylight. So let's say we are shooting at night, but we're supposed to shoot a day scene. So how do we do that? How do we bring a light that powerful to be able to replicate sunlight around, let's say, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. During the day? This is when the HMI light gets pulled out from the van and put on set. So let's say there's people around that might be looking at the light. If the light is turned on and they're looking at the light, those people, it will really hurt their eyes. And there might be some damage done to their like eyes and to their like retinas and everything. So in order to not have this happen and be very safe on set, the gaffer, which is the person who is usually the electrician on set, he's the one taking care of the lights and lighting the set. Before actually powering on the light, they have to literally scream out striking for everyone to hear. Once you say striking, that means that a light source is about to be powered on. And that also means that you should not look at the light as it's being powered on, as it could be very, very dangerous. So whenever you are on set, please make sure to say striking before turning on the light so that no severe damages could be done to anyone. Fluorescent lightings could be great in order to light up more of like an ambient feel. They could be great if you're shooting, for example, a hospital scene. I mean, hospitals are filled with fluorescent lights, and you can see that on screen because you get this certain feel of like greenness. And these are amazing to replicate the mood of like a hospital, of a very kind of industrial setting. These are the lights that you might be more likely to use because they replicate the mood that is essential for such settings. These lights can be either in 3,200 kelvins, and they can go up to 5,600. Fluorescent lighting does come with the option to be dimmable, to change the intensity. Also, a very cool thing about these, that if you do want to remove the certain tint of greenness, you can actually bring something to place on top, in front of the light that would change the color, that would change the hue and give you a different feel, which we'll be talking about soon. Moving on to probably the most used type of lights that you would usually see around your houses, any place you really go to nowadays, which are the LEDs. The LEDs come in two different fixtures, panels and Fresnels also. The panels are something like this, is made out of many LED lights put really next to each other that give off this type of light. What's cool about LEDs is that you can actually play around with their colors. You can have LED lights in absolutely every single type of color you can ever imagine. You can have them in blue and red and purple, anything. Nowadays, LEDs are made in absolutely every single color, and they are very efficient. And actually, maybe even sadly enough, in the future, you might be able to see LEDs everywhere, and they might actually replace the tungsten lights, as tungstens are actually kind of harmful to the human body because of how much heat they produce. While LEDs, they don't produce heat, they don't overheat in any possible way, they last longer, their lifespan, you can have them up to lit, up to I don't know how many hours, maybe days, and they wouldn't die out on you because of their really long lifespan that the manufacturers are doing them in. This particular light we have here is actually an LED light. This is not powered the same way as a traditional tungsten light. But what's cool about this Fresnel light, that you can actually change its settings from daylight to tungsten. You can have it in absolute different types of settings. You can have it do it like strobe and everything like that, because this is an LED and it is prone to these different type of changes. You can change the color, you can change the intensity, you can dim them down, you can do absolutely whatever you want with them. And they're also powered by batteries, so you don't need to have them directly in the source, but you can have them in batteries, you can move them around and place them wherever you want to. And you can replicate absolutely every single mood that you want to replicate for your lighting and present within your film. You can modify light, and you can modify the color of light. So how do we do that? Remember when I was talking about fluorescence and how they have a kind of orangey and green feel to them? Well, with certain filters, or let's say color gels, you can actually change the color of that. So let's look at this light right here. This light is actually an LED Fresnel, and as you can see, the original color of it is tungsten. I don't know if you can guys see this. It's actually tungsten. But I don't want it tungsten, I want it to be, pink, because I'm feeling this mood right now. And so I grabbed something called a gel, which comes in a variety of colors. You can have them in absolutely every single color you ever wished for. And I place it on top of the light. And now the light hitting on my body is magenta. So this is a light modifier, and it comes in a gel. We have absolutely different types of gels. As said before, every single type of color. We have greens, we have oranges, we have purples, literally every single color. And you can light your setting within absolutely different color you want to create a particular mood that you're wishing for. So right now I want the mood to be slightly warm, to be kind of, maybe funky. That's why I got a magenta. But you can change that, and you can place an orange gel in front, and you'll have an absolutely very, very warm mood that might be inviting and warm. And if that's the mood that you're going on with your film, then this might be the gel for you. We usually in the industry use two very important gels, which are called CTO and CTB. What do these gels do, and why do we use them that much? Basically, a CTO, which is orange, and a CTB, which is blue. I don't know if you can guys see it. Can you show them the colors? So orange and blue. Why are these ones very, very famous in the industry, and why do we use them that much? Let's say you have a tungsten light, but you don't want that orangey feel, and you're shooting perhaps like more of a night scene. So you want that kind of blue feel, you want that darkness, and you don't want that orange hue. You would grab a CTB and put it on top of the light, and this will give you a night kind of Hollywood feel of like everything's blue and moonlight and everything. This will give you that feeling. But let's say, for example, I have an HMI, which is in daylight, but I'm shooting a scene where it's mostly around, the sun is setting, and, the vibe is very warm before we go into night. So I don't have a tungsten. What do? I'll grab this gel, which is CTO, and I'll put it in front of the HMI. And this would replicate more of the setting that I'm wishing for, which is the sun setting and then orangey feel. This is what this gel will help you achieve, the mood and the setting that you wish for. We have different types of light modifiers. So we spoke about gels. We also have something called ND filters, which I do believe by now you know what an ND filter might be in the camera. We have the same thing for lights. ND filters are actually sunglasses for the camera. Well, these two are kind of sunglasses, but for the light. These bring down the intensity of light. So these ones, they don't change the color temperature, but they do change the intensity of the light, which is how much light is being emitted from the light source. And you can control them with these. And these actually come in stops. So whenever you want to go to the studio and grab them, make sure you're getting them in the right stop that you wish for in order to place them in front of your light and achieve the mood that you're looking for. We also have something called diffusion. What this diffuser does is that if I place it in front of the light, I'm going to get a way softer feel on her face, on the part that's lit. So let's see the difference. Here's it with a diffuser. Here's it without a diffuser. You can see that the light is being way softer on the face the part of her face that is lit. Instead, we're kind of lacking right now a specular feel, which should be here. So without a diffuser, you're getting that specular type of light. With the diffuser, you're getting more of a soft, diffused quality of light. And this is exactly what a diffuser does. Moving on to more light modifiers. We have something that's called flags. So what does a flag do? The flag blocks the light. With the flag, you can control the direction of the light, and you can control how much light is being is hitting your object or subject. So right now we have a flag, right, kind of next to the light source, and we're going to bring it down to hide the light. And you're going to see that my face right now is more in darkness than of how it was, which is like that. So flags control how much light you want to shine and control how much basically light you want there to be on your subject or reflected even on a surface. And now the last light modifier that we have is something called a reflector. What does a reflector do? From its name, reflectors reflect light. But then we have a side of the reflector that perhaps could be gold. And so with this gold, or it also comes in silver sometimes, what's going to do that is going to reflect this quality of goldness, and the light is going to shine on your subject within that quality, that feel, and that color that this reflector is right now producing into my skin. And so if you want to make your character look very glowy, look very like coming from the beach in a way, and their skin is like, you know, flawless and nice, maybe this is what you want to use. Or right now in the setting that we're using it in, we're kind of replicating as a strong source that is warm, and it's hitting my face, and it's making me look a bit warmer than of the settings that I'm in right now. And we also have the white side, which is just going to bounce. The light's going to bounce into this, and this is going to reflect the light into me. So I'm going to have a bit more light. I'm going to be lit more, basically.
And it's soft shadows as well.
And also soften shadows, because it kind of acts shway as a diffuser. So right now you can see that I don't really have shadows on my face. My face is very even. My skin tone is even. And that is done by the reflector.
This time show them the difference between you being in the light.
So here's me being in the light, and the light being reflected with the reflector onto my skin. And the reflector on the golden side.
The most basic form of lighting technique is a three-point light. This is something that you will use consistently when filming things or in whatever kind of setting. This is the most basic type of lighting. So basically you have three types of lights, or three lights basically. The key light, which hits on this side and is the main light that you'll be using. Then you have a fill light, which will fill some of the remaining shadows on the side of the subject. The key light is set at 45 degrees, and the fill light is set at 45 degrees. And then you have a backlight, or the hair light, which will just shine on the hair and separate the subject from the background, whereas the camera's there shooting the subject. I'll demonstrate. As you can see from this camera angle, I have a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Notice how it's lighting my face, right? I'll jump to the main camera, which is where we're gonna make most of our viewing. So again, key light, fill light, backlight. I'm gonna turn all these lights off and keep the key light on, just to show you what happens. This is the key light. As you can see, the light is hitting my face, and it's a bit dark on this side. There's a bit of shadows, right? So that's where I use a fill light. I'm gonna use just a fill light now to show you the difference between the key and the fill light, which is less of an intensity than the key light. So this is the fill light. As you can see, it's lighting my face, but it's not lighting me entirely well. That's why we have a key light. The fill light just fills in the empty spaces where the shadowy spaces where the key light is not filling it or not touching it, because it's at a 45-degree angle and another 45-degree angle. So here's the backlight on me. As you can see, most of my face is not lit because the light is behind me. However, it is creating a contour of my almost hairless head with the light that it's hitting. So it's separating me from the background. I'm not merging into the background. With the current light setting, I have a key light and a fill light minus the backlight. So my face is lit, or I'm entirely lit quite well, except I'm not that well separated from the background. So now I'm back with the three-point lights, which is showing me quite well separated from the background and well-lit face. This is three-point lighting. Now, there are other types of lighting terminologies that you need to understand. The catch light is the light that is caught in the eye of the subject. Without it, the subject will look dead. If you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, this is Lady Galadriel. Do you see these lights, these multitude of lights, the catch light in her eyes? That's not one light, that's many lights. They actually used Christmas lights, hanging them above her face, just to get those lights in her eyes. to create a magical kind of feel to who she is, being an elf and all. There are many lighting techniques. There's the split lighting, which splits the face exactly into equal halves, with one side being in the light and the other in the shadow. To do this, you put the light at a 90-degree angle to the left or right of the subject, and possibly even behind their head. In true split lighting, the eye on the shadow side of the face does not pick up the light on the eye side, the other side. So this is what split lighting is. I have a light right on my side right now, hitting me, and my left side is in shadow. I'm going to switch to the other camera, the main camera, to show you what things look like right now. You see, there's only one light on my face, creating this shadowy look. Then there's something called loop lighting. Loop lighting is made by creating a small shadow of the subject's nose on their cheeks. To create loop lighting, the light source must be slightly higher than the eye level and about 30 to 45 degrees from the camera. Depending on a person, you have to learn how to read the person's face because it changes. Not every person is the same. Somebody may have a longer nose, somebody bigger cheeks. It depends. In loop lighting, the shadow of the nose and that of the cheek do not touch. You'll see why later. There's another type of light for that. You'll notice that this is similar to where the key light is usually positioned, 45 to 35 degrees away from the camera. So there's the light, it's hitting my face, and it's creating a bit of a shadow on my cheek, but they're not touching. And this is what it looks like from the bigger angle camera, only one light. Then there's a Rembrandt light technique. The Rembrandt light is identified by a triangle of light on the cheek, as you can see on the cheek of these two ladies there. To create a Rembrandt light, the subject must be slightly away from the light. The light must be above the top of their head so that the shadow from their nose falls down towards their cheek. Something like this. Now, I'm all alone here, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm hitting this right or not, so I'm going to just turn my face a little bit and try and see if I'm getting it right. I believe so from the way I'm looking at the monitor, which is on my side over there. So, see the light there, and the rest is in shadow. That's a Rembrandt type of light, and it's a very common type of light to use, or technique to use, to flatter someone's looks or face. Then there's what we call the butterfly lighting, named for the butterfly-shaped shadow that is created under the nose by placing the main light source above and directly behind the camera. The photographer is basically shooting underneath the light source of this pattern. So as you can see from the lighting here, there's a bit of shadow right under my nose right there. If you look at the way I have the light set up, there's that big light, there's my main camera, so we end up with this look. Then there's what we call broad lighting technique. Broad lighting is a style of lighting rather than a particular pattern. Any of the following patterns of light can be either broad or short, loop, Rembrandt, or split. Broad lighting is when the subject's face is slightly turned away from the center and the side of the face which is toward the camera, the broader side, is in the light. So basically it would be something like that. This is broad lighting. I'm turned towards the light and away from the camera a little bit, and that's creating a broad light. Short lighting is the opposite of broad lighting. As you can see by the example here, short lighting puts the side turned towards the camera, that which appears larger, in more shadow. It would be something like that. I'm more towards the camera, and there's light on this side, but there's more shadow on that side. That's short lighting. Then there's silhouette lighting. That's when the subject is lit from behind only, just like this. You see, it's like the backlight, but I've positioned the light right behind me. Now it's shining on me and creating a bit of a silhouette. Now I'm going to change it a little bit to show you different ways in which you can have silhouette. This is with the light right behind me. It's lower and on my head, and it's still creating a bit of a silhouette right there. You can see the contours of my face. You may be able to see a bit of my face right here. That's because the light is bouncing off a white wall. But for the most part, I'm silhouetted. Now, another way of having a silhouette light is by having a curtain or a diffuser right behind you, and you hit a light on it, and you see how I'm silhouetted now. I'm still getting some light on my face, but that's also because there's a white wall in front of me, and that's reflecting light on me. Incidentally, that's another way of using lights, by the way. It's to bounce lights off a wall or a ceiling, a white ceiling. For example, to achieve a high key lighting setting, a high key light is when there's a lot of light the lights are overwhelming, as in this picture here from Harry Potter. There's overwhelming light. As you can see from the camera angle, I'm very well lit right now. There's a lot of white, there's a lot of lights. That's high key lighting. And then there's low key lighting, which is, as this image shows, there's a lot less light and more incidental light. So this is what low key lighting would be more like. It's less light, I'm a bit in the dark, it's a bit cozy. Now there are many ways to play with this, many ways in which you can direct the light, block it off a bit, to just make it look the way you need it, as in this picture. Then there's what we call top lighting, and that creates a bit of a scary look like that. And that's the kind of top light. So it kind of creates shadows underneath my eyes because of the eyebrows, and the light is coming directly from above. I'll show you on the other camera. See, the light is right above me. It's right here. And this is the result that it gives. Then there is low angle lighting. That's the total opposite of highlighting. This is when the light is coming from right below and up. As you can see from this far angle, I have the light right in my hands and I'm pointing it right up to my face. So it creates shadows of my nose and features all the way up like that. And it's like the campfire stories, you know, when they get a flashlight and put it right there and, ooh, tell ghost stories. So we have this light over here, and I've seen the tendency of some people who just take a diffuser and put it right on the light. That's not going to change the size of this fixture. What we need to do is just take it away. See how bigger the light has become as we took the light away from it? Now I'm going to hang it. And I'm going to switch back to the main view camera. And now look and see how the shadows on my face are a lot less pronounced and a lot less sharp than the actual original light, which I'll go back to in a minute. And switch back to this camera. See how the shadows are sharper?
So as you can see from the different demonstrations, you can see that the way we're lighting and the way we're bouncing light off, it affects the mood. And so with different techniques that Samir is going to talk to you about, we're going to achieve a different type of feel within the lights. For example, if we're using low lighting, why would you use it first of all? You want to use this maybe when you want to give off more of a mystery vibe, when you want to show that your character isn't like really innocent and maybe is passing through something in their life. And if you want to achieve this feel of mystery, this feel of that there's something that's being hidden and we don't exactly know what's happening, maybe that's when you want to use kind of low light. And different types of light, different ways of lighting, it really affects your mood. So mood is lighting in film. Lighting is a mood. And it really helps achieve certain setting that you want. It helps achieve the feel that you want. A feel of mystery, a feel of night to day, a feel of a setting. For example, if you're in a hospital, maybe you would like to even gel all your lights in green because they do have that feel of sickness. And so that might be something that you might go for and modify your lights that you're using to achieve that mood. For example, if we are in a romantic setting, maybe you'd like to pull out a magenta gel and put it in front of your light, maybe a bit of red somewhere, a bit of warmth, a tungsten light somewhere to shine on the characters, so you can give them warmth, so you can give them a feel of inviteness, of passion with the magenta. Colors represent mood, they represent certain feels. And so one thing that's really great that you can try out is actually understand colors. Understand what each color represents. For example, using a blue could maybe indicate loneliness. Let's imagine a room filled with blue. The character's inside, he's alone, and everything's in blue. That might represent a bit of loneliness. That might represent a bit of sadness. That there's just something that's not exactly positive about this person. But now let's remove the blue and keep the character's same settings and gel everything in orange. You're gonna represent inviteness. You're gonna represent warmth to this character. You're gonna make that character feel to your audience that this character is warm, that this character is inviting, that this character feels good and wants you to see that. And so with these colors, you're gonna perceive the mood. You're gonna perceive that certain feeling, and you're going to feel it when you're watching whatever is happening on screen if you use those different modifiers, if you use those different types of lights. Let's take, for example, if we are, in a fantasy sequence. Maybe you'd actually like to gel your colors on purple because the color purple associates with dreams, associates with something that doesn't exactly bind us to this world. So a really good thing about understanding light is actually understanding its colors, the representation of these colors within films. What do they represent? What mood do they make you feel? And also, if you really want to understand how to light something, I really advise you to just look around every day. Just take a moment and look around your settings at night, before you go to sleep, as you're waking up, and look at your shadows. Look at the way the light enters your room, and just observe the way it changes through the day. Observe the way it hits objects, and how when it's hitting when your light is hitting an object or something, how it diffuses, and how that actual ray of light maybe even refracts and hits something else. And it's by that direction, it's actually lighting more of a space. So look at your light, observe it, have fun with it, and this will make you really understand how to light for a film. Thank you so much for watching this session. I really hope you learned, and if you ever need advice about lighting a space, about lighting for your film, you can always reach out. We're all here to help you. We're all here to guide you, and we're all here for you. Thank you so much. Bye.